Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every Thursday, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts. My guest today used to be a senior designer in advertising and marketing firms in Detroit for over 10 years, eventually opening her own agency. After getting involved in martial arts, it ended up becoming a very important part of her life. She lived and trained in Korea for 2 years and returned to the U.S. and opened her own school. She's a speaker and presenter and has given talks all over the world, has appeared on the cover of martial arts magazines, and was named Black Belt Woman of the Year in 2019. She has also been inducted into numerous Hall of Fames and won countless awards. In 2019, she retired and gifted her school to her loyal students. She currently lives in Puerta Vallarta, where she teaches multiple martial arts for fun and continues her own training as well. She holds numerous black belt certifications, including an 8th degree black belt in Taekwondo. Please welcome my guest today, Miss Rondy McKee. How are you doing today, Rondy?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for taking the time.
Great job for my story there.
I appreciate it. Thank you. So how we like to kick things off, I want to go back to the beginning and find out what was that first spark? What led to that first interest in martial arts and kind of how your journey began?
Okay. Well, I think there was always maybe a spark, but, when we're talking like 50 years ago, I remember that I never had heard of Taekwondo at that time. It was only karate back then, or at least that's what everything was called. They called it Korean karate.
Yep.
But the only kids that took it were the kids that had behavior issues in school, and it was kind of a punishment.
Really?
So it wasn't something that we would ask to do. Like the bad kids got sent to karate. They had to do karate for the discipline.
Wow.
But, as I got older and I started driving, I remember I was like maybe 16 and I wanted to see what was going on inside of a school, but I was extremely shy. And I will always remember my first impression of what a school looked like to someone who knows nothing about martial arts. And I try to remember that when I enroll new students, throughout the rest of my career. But when I walked in, it looked like a bunch of middle-aged men to me, wearing, strange outfits. And I swear it looked like they were playing leapfrog. I don't know what kind of an exercise they were doing, but that's what it looked like. And it sounded like they were barking like dogs. And They noticed me looking at the class. I was a little girl. They noticed me looking at the class, and, one of them headed toward me, probably, see if I wanted some information. And I was terrified, and I turned around and I left. I never talked to anybody. And so I know there was a spark. And so I didn't start at that time. Okay. I actually started a couple of years later when I was, like, as you said, working in Detroit and found that I was a little girl in a big city, having to work in places where I probably shouldn't have been. And I found that I needed to learn some self-defense. And so when I actually did start, it was purely just to learn some self-defense. I was going to learn a couple chop-chop moves, and then I was going to be out of there. And that was the plan. But that's not what happened.
Obviously. So then how did you go about choosing a school? What led to that? What type of research did you do?
Well, when you don't know, you just pick what you go by. And I worked in advertising. Between my work and where I lived every day, I went by a place, that, said Taekwondo, Olympic Taekwondo or something like that on the door. And, I had a sign, 3 lessons for $20 or $19.99. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And I started there. And I made it to Yellow Belt.
Okay.
And it was a great school, wonderful school. But I made it to Yellow Belt, and then I was asked to go to my first tournament. And that's when my eyes were really kind of opened, as to how much more there was out there. And I really saw instructors, Korean masters, that really looked like they were in charge. And I thought, if I'm really liking this activity, I think maybe I need to upgrade a little bit. And so what I did, in Detroit, there's a lot of traffic, takes a long time to get to work. But I looked at the master that I wanted to go train with. I looked where his school was, and it was clear the other side of Detroit for me. And so I started putting in job resumes, and I changed my job so that I could move and go to that school that I wanted to go to.
That's dedication. Wow.
Well, nowadays it's so funny. Then for the next 40 years, students would tell me, "Well, I can't come anymore. I'm moving away." And I'm like, "Move, move closer to me." Or they say my job is transferring me. I'm like, "Well, change jobs." I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, "Well, of course, if you love your school, of course you'll change your job and be close to it."
That's great. Wow.
But not everybody thinks that way.
So thinking back then, that first of all, that first school, you took those first 3 intro lessons. What was it that made you want to keep going and eventually get to the yellow belt of that school? What was it about it that drew you in and that you enjoyed?
The thing that I noticed the most is, I was learning some kicks and some moves, but the thing that I really noticed was the difference that it was making in my work, in my career, in my advertising career. I worked in a department, there's 42 people, and I was the only female. I was with all these other male instructors, or not instructors, designers.
Yep.
And just constantly trying to do double the work just to kind of keep up with them. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I felt like I had worked so much harder, and I was really too shy. And the confidence that training in martial arts gave me, I started changing at work. I started becoming more confident. I started jumping ahead. I started getting the better jobs, the promotions. And that's the part that I didn't want to give up, was the changes that I found in myself.
Okay.
The rest of it, it's still learning some self-defense and getting some good exercise, but I wasn't going to give up that change in my character for anything.
Nice. And then when you finally switched schools, what was it about that instructor? I mean, you obviously saw something at the tournament and you decided to give it a shot with a new instructor. What was it about that instructor that made you?
He just seemed like, he had a lot more clout. He really seemed like he kind of controlled the tournament. I really wanted my first instructor was an American instructor, which, I'm an American instructor, so nothing bad about American instructors, but I just wanted that Korean tradition. I just wanted he was saying the words in Korean, and he was, I could see he had more of the tradition, and that's what I was interested in, was not just learning just the moves, but I wanted to really learn about the art.
Okay, and do you remember which Taekwondo system was that? Which Kwan was that under?
Well, my very first one was Chongdo Kwan, but then I switched, and then my grandmaster was Jida Kwan.
Okay.
But, of course, everything was Cookie Wan in the end.
Yeah, correct.
But I guess my roots, to any Kwan, I feel Jida Kwan.
Okay. And then you had mentioned the competition. So was that something that you wanted to do, or did they, hey, you're doing a tournament?
I was young, you got that fight now, when you're young, in Detroit, you got that little fighting spirit. So, yeah, I really enjoyed competing in both forms and sparring, and my master had all his friends that owned all these schools throughout, really like in Michigan, Chicago, and a lot of in Canada as well. We had these circuits where there was a tournament almost every single month. I really enjoyed that. The travel, the camaraderie, and just going with the team and going to compete. I really enjoyed that for a while.
Nice. And which forms were you doing? The Paul Gay forms?
I was doing the Palgway forms back then.
Nice. Okay. My school still does those, actually.
Forms.
Yeah.
I still do them.
Okay.
But, we have to know the Taeguk as well.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of the Taeguk. I don't know what it is about them. I like the Palgway better. I'm not a fan of forms. But if I had to pick, I like the Palgay.
Yeah, once you get older, you start to like forms more.
Yeah, I can see that. I definitely like. I'm 48. I definitely like them more than I did when I was 18. So. Yeah,
and just wait. You'll start to appreciate the forms even more. I really do enjoy them more than I did when I was younger.
Nice.
I wanted more action when I was younger, but now I really enjoy the forms.
Okay. What do you remember that first tournament? What did you compete in sparring and forms at that first tournament, and how'd you do?
I always did, they were local tournaments, so I always did really well. I almost always took first in forms, and then, usually like a first or second in sparring.
Okay. So what?
Not always, but, I had quite a few trophies and medals. I can't remember exactly, but
right.
There's quite a stash of them, that decorate the school.
So I got to ask, which was your favorite Palgay form?
Chill.
Okay.
7.
Yes. That's
a good one.
Probably mine too.
That's a good one. And 4 is good too. For competition, 4 and 7 are both really good.
So I wonder if your instructor did the same thing that my instructor still does with Palgay forms. When you're testing for black belt, and this is a thing, because I did not like forms back then when I tested. I hated this part. So you have to know, all 8 of them, but he mixes them up. So he'll be like, all right, do the first 4 steps of Palge Chilchung. All right. Now do steps 5 through 8 of Palge Samchung.
Oh, I've never heard of that. That's good.
Oh,
that's good.
I hate it. I hate it. I mean, I definitely see the benefit, but and like I said, you never know which order he's going to go in. So it's talk about nerve wracking.
He used to do, he had some creative things. I remember one, he didn't do it to me, but he made one of the guys sing Mary Had a Little Lamb while he did his form.
Really?
That was really distracting for him. He would make us close our eyes, face different directions, and, have you sit down and you think you're done and then boom, you're back up there again.
Yeah. My instructor had me make faces at someone to try to get him to laugh.
I have an instructor now, in classes that I take now, that makes us do our forms starting to the left, the traditional way, and then starting to the right.
Mm-hmm. That's so tough.
And that's really a challenge.
Yeah,
that's a challenge for me.
I love doing that for the kids. It's like, because they're used to, facing the flag wall, facing the flag, like, all right, now you're going to go face opposite direction. They're like, what? Like, you should know the form, not just based on how you're standing in the gym. So yeah, it's the first time I had a kid do that, the look on their eyes, I almost felt bad. So, but it's fun.
Now we for our black belt tests, they have to do them in all different directions, and they rotate around, and they do them all, and we do them. Some are done to music, all different ways. And some are done like in like demo team formation. So they look really cool. Because we're not only testing for black belt, but we're putting on a show for the audience. For all the people that came to watch as well.
Nice. And then what do you remember about your first black belt test? What are some things that stand out?
My first one, just not knowing what to expect. My master had 5 schools, and all 5 schools came together.
Oh.
I just remember doing one of the forms. I can't remember which one, but it was one where you'd spin around. And I remember me and the guy next to me, we all started the same way, but when we spun, we were like nose to nose. And one of us was wrong. And we just looked at each other's eyes, and then I saw him like fumble, and I'm like, oh, yes. Him.
I got it right.
I do remember that. Nice. I just remember we were not supposed to be in this position at all. But then just not getting no feedback. That was what was really weird. No feedback. Wow. And we didn't get results for 18 months.
Really?
When he was very old school, I would say hey, about those black belts, because you can't ask if you passed. Your master will tell you when you pass. I'm like, okay. So we just had to wait. Wow. And it was when a big international tournament was coming up, and we needed our rank. We needed our certificates or our cards or whatever, and that's when he finally gave them to us, because it was a necessity.
That's crazy. Yeah, I found out the same.
Yeah,
I found out the same day. So.
Yeah.
And I've heard other schools do that too.
Well, we actually have them take the test, and then we would send them off to Cookie One and get them back, and that's that takes a couple months. So they do have to wait a couple months in my school, but it's not 18 months.
I had to wait to get my certificate, but I did know that I passed. So I mean that was at least a good thing. Yeah.
Well, we would always say you're recommended. That we as a testing panel have recommended you, but it's not a done deal until you get it from Cookie One.
Okay, that's actually not.
That's what we would say.
Yeah, not bad to make them wait. But I also know there's times where the Cookie One's been a little backed up, and sometimes it's taken 6 months to get a certificate. So.
Yeah, they're not. I mean, nowadays, it's all computerized, so now it's not so bad. It used to be like when you had to mail them in.
Back in the old days.
Yeah, well, I remember going to Korea a couple times and standing in the office, and they had this big giant typewriter, and they would type them for you while you waited.
Wow.
They get you a little cup of coffee, and they'd be typing them, but it was like an oversized typewriter, to fit those big certificates in there.
That's cool.
So that was long ago.
Nice. So at what belt level, when did teaching become something that you started doing and realized you wanted to pursue?
What's funny, I started teaching really early. I kind of had an interest, and I had mentioned it to my master, when do I learn how to teach? I didn't know, how do you learn how to teach? And so he said, okay, come on Saturday. And I was only a blue belt. I didn't mean now, but he's like, come on Saturday. Because Saturday was kind of like the little more lax day, maybe. Yep. And so come on Saturday, and he had me stand in front, and he had a chair, and he sat off to the side, and he's like, teach. You want to teach? Teach. I'm like, so, I'm put in the spot there. And I'm counting, and he's like, too fast, too slow. Once in a while he'd like put his hand on his forehead and goes, who taught you that? And it was just horrifying. And this went on for like 6 weeks, every single Saturday.
Wow.
Just him like telling me that I'm doing it wrong. And then like on the 7th week, he didn't show up.
Okay.
And that's when I knew, I'm like, okay, I guess I'm doing it good enough. And then he just didn't even bother coming in on Saturday. So Saturday was then my day.
See,
and I just taught on Saturday.
That's cool. At least you had a little help. I was a purple belt, and my instructor's like, it's like, I'm giving you a class on Tuesday night. Be here at 8:00. I'm like, yes, sir. So I show up on Tuesday night, and I look out there, and there's all these people that are higher ranks than me. It's all like brown belts, red belts. I'm like, oh, when does my class get here, sir? He's like, they're there. I'm like, what? He looks at me, he goes, if they don't listen, give them push-ups. He goes, class, Mr. Bryant's in charge, and he left. So mine was like, here you go, jump in the deep end.
Well, all of this, even though it was kind of horrifying at the time,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I did learn quickly, there's nothing like being humiliated to make you get better at something. But it made me always take notes of when I grow up and make my own school, I'm going to like give them some instruction on how to teach before I just tell them everything they do is wrong. So I learned so much stuff from my master. It's not necessarily the way that I would teach it or the way that I did end up teaching it,
Mm-hmm.
but it gave me really good ideas for when I made my own school. That I made a leadership team. And the goal of the leadership team, we met every single week and we learned how to teach a class.
Nice.
Because my school ended up getting very big. And, at one time I needed 40 instructors.
Wow.
And, yeah. And so, but, you have to teach them. You can't just expect people to know what to do. And you can't be, not everybody's going to come back if you sit at the edge of the class and yell at them the whole class.
Definitely.
Most people won't come back. So anyways, I got that really good idea of making that leadership team and really focused on teaching them how to teach a class.
And that kind of moves to my next question, which you partially answered. So thinking back to that first Saturday class, what do you think has mostly changed about your teaching style over the years?
Just the confidence, and just really learning to read your, to read your audience, and to see if you need to pick up the pace or you need to slow it down a little. You've got someone having a hard time, how to break it down, but not in a way that embarrasses them, in a way that you can make the whole class go through a drill that would help this one guy out and not draw attention to him doing it wrong. You know what I mean? Like, you just really learn how to take care of an audience.
Okay.
And, I remember back when I first started, like one kid fell to the floor, he passed out. Okay, that class was too hard for a new guy.
Nice.
You learn, you see someone, the look in the face or, you're like, oh, let's slow that down a little bit. Let's break that down. So no, there's nothing that's going to replace experience. Experience is just gold.
Right. So what led to the decision for you to move to Korea?
Well, it really wasn't. It was, I was an instructor, and then my master was like, you do marketing. How can I get more students? I said, well, to do advertising. He goes, without spending money. Well, that's a bigger challenge, right? I'm like, well, there is a way to do it. And what we need to do is you need to tell people what you're doing. I explained to them that doing business without advertising is like winking in the dark. You know what you're doing, but nobody else does. So we need to let them know what's going on inside here and how much fun it is and how much fun the kids are having doing it. So I said, we need a demo team. And so I put together a demo team. And we would go to the malls and we would go to the movie theaters and we would do our little shows and hand out flyers, and people started to trickle in. And so, of course, you want to make that demo team better and better. And one day my master comes in with this huge stack of, again, telling my age, VHS tapes, the big tapes.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, watch these. And I'm like, all right. So I couldn't wait to go home and get my VCR out and started watching them. And it was of the Korean Tigers.
Nice.
Yeah. And oh my God, I was just glued. I was just like, oh my goodness, this is stuff I have never seen before. The stunts, the tricks, the jumps. And so I'm like, okay, we need to do this stuff. Well, it's a lot harder than it looks. So he does stop by one Saturday, and I've got a stack of chairs, and I've got kids piled on top of kids, and we're like trying to jump over, and we're trying to do some of the stuff, and he calls me out real quick, and he goes, someone's going to die. And he said, I said, well, we want a really good demo team. He goes, well, you're going to kill him. He said, if you want to learn how to do it, I'll take you to Korea. And that's really what opened the door. I'm like, okay. So we decided in 6 months, he would take me to Korea and we would go see the Korean Tigers. That the coach was a friend of his and he could get me into watching, kind of deal. Okay. So, we bought one of those cameras. So I looked like I worked for the news station. Remember the old cameras that were so big that had the whole VHS tape inside of it?
Had to rest on your shoulder.
And,
Yep.
Yes, exactly. Yep. That's what I said. Looked like I worked for the news. So we bought one of those, and he told me, he's like, Korea's much harder training than here, so you better get ready. So I hired a personal trainer. I did some extra training, and he said, and they speak Korean. And so I I joined a Korean church where they would have lessons for Korean for the kids.
Cool. Okay.
Korean kids that lived in America. So they, practicing my reading and my writing, and I had 6 months to get ready, and we went to Korea thinking this is going to be great. I'm going to get the best footage ever. I'm going to learn exactly how to do this stuff, how they do the setup. And I get there, and it's a whole bunch of other foreigners standing outside the door where the Korean Tigers train with pretty much the same idea. They all think they're going in too. And the coach just stops us all dead. He's like, we're training here. There's auditions going on. And, we're putting together the next group, and you can't watch that. You certainly can't tape it. And I was like, oh, my God, I prepared, 6 months for this. I was, devastated. I came all the way to Korea. And my master said, it was winter. It was January. He said, do you have your dobok with you? And I'm like, yeah, it's in my backpack. He goes, go put it on. I'm like, downtown Seoul. And he goes, go put it on. There's no locker room. But luckily, like girls, when you put your suit on at the beach, and you got to get dressed in the car. I did one of those, underneath my jacket. I got my uniform on.
Nice.
And I come around the corner, and my master's talking to the coach, and they let me in. They only let me in. I couldn't videotape, but they said they put me out there with auditions.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, I'm going to die. So I'm in there with this group of all these guys, and we're doing training. It starts off pretty good. I think it's pretty intense. And I remember the very first day we had to go in this saddle stretch, and I could never go all the way quite down. I got pretty close, but never all the way. And the coach comes by, I'm like, son, and he says, can you go down in broken English? Can you go down all the way? And I said, no, sir. And he pushes on my shoulder, he goes, push me down the ground. He goes, now you can. Sure enough, now I can. Luckily, I was young enough that nothing snapped or broke. But so it was training like that. We started at 10 and we were done at 4. Wow. We had a lunch break and a little nap afterwards, but then, started up again. And so I'm like, that was the best day of my life. That was wonderful. And at the end of the day, he says, come back tomorrow. I'm like, what? Okay. So I went back, and that happened. Come back tomorrow, come back tomorrow, come back tomorrow. That went on for 2 weeks. And I was now I was in the routines. I was practicing. My part was self-defense. I was beating up the guys. Then, after I was supposed to go back home. That was what I was supposed to go back home, because I was only going for a 1 month, tour. And I ended up staying and a little bit longer. But I said, no, I got to go. And they had given me a running suit with my name on it, embroidered on it. And they said, no, you're going to come with us. You're going to do the tour with us. And I'm like, no, I have a life. I got to go back. And I went back to Detroit. And my master had left me. He had already gone back because he didn't stay as long as I did. But I'm like, no, these are my new friends. I can't leave. I gotta stay. So I came back to my school, and the first thing I started doing was teaching like we were training in Korea. And my master comes out because I've got the music going, and we're kicking targets now, which we never did before. He's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm like, we're training. He goes, no, that's crazy style. But for me, that's what I had been doing for the last, 4 or 6 weeks or something like that. And once you see that style, like that high intensity, that energy, you can't give that up. You can't unsee it.
Yep.
And I couldn't go back to my old way of, school, set. I couldn't go back to teaching that way when I knew there was this much more exciting way that was so much fun. And he's like, no, you, and he sent me home. He was mad at me. And I'm home, and I had a fax machine. And that's when it had the thermal paper, and it would just come out in one big strip, So it was all piling up. And it was my friends at the Korean Tigers, and they're like, you got to come with us. We need you. You're in the sets. And they're like, join us. Join us. We're flying to USA tomorrow. Join us. But I was in Detroit, and they were coming through like Portland. And I'm like, no, I got a life. And, I slept on it that night, and I'm like, I'm not happy going back to my school because I can't go back to the old way. And, I don't know. I'm like, no one has ever been given this opportunity before. I'm going to go. And I just decided I was going to go. And I said, okay, I'm going to sell my house. Called a friend who was a realtor, sell my house. I had a friend that had a car lot, and I brought my car over. I'm like, sell my car. And I brought my 2 cats to my mom's house. And I said, watch my cats. And I said, I'm going to be gone a year. And my mom's like, what? And I was like, pulling out of the driveway, like, bye-bye, kitties. And I went. I met up with him in Seattle, and I joined him for the rest of the tour. And then I went back to Korea with him.
Wow.
And originally I thought I was going to stay for 1 year because I'm like, what a resume, put that on my resume. Mm-hmm. And then after 1 year, I'm like, no, I got to stay some more. So I stayed for 2 years.
Wow. What a story. What an experience.
Yeah. And, and like at that time, like, this was before the internet and all that kind of stuff. And I spent the night before I moved to Korea at my mom's house. I had me and my 7 boxes. All my worldly possessions were in 7 boxes going to Korea. And 2 of them were my computer and my printer. And my mom wakes me up in the middle of the night. And she's like, what happens to girls in Korea? I'm like, no, what? And she's like, I don't know, but it's dangerous there. And I said, well, I am a black belt. And, she's like, wasn't everybody a black belt there? I'm like, I don't know, but I still went. And it was tough. It was a big leap of faith, really. Mm-hmm. But I just really felt like I could not live with myself if I would not have taken that chance.
Right.
I was like, I can live with making mistakes, mm-hmm. But I couldn't live with like regretting, like wondering, I'm the only American that's ever had this chance. How could I possibly pass this up?
That's cool.
So that's what I did.
Wow. And so in the 2 years you were over there, did you test at all when you were over there for rank?
I did. I did my fourth dan. I was already a 3rd degree when I went. I did my 4th dan test there. And so I came back. I was 30 when I came back. Okay. And that's when I came back and made a school.
And what led to that decision, and how did you end up in North Carolina?
Well, the decision was I was 30, and it's like, your bones just can't take that anymore. I'm like, okay, I was already pushing it. I was already the oldest. The rest of them were like in their early 20s, and I was 28 when I moved there. Yep. And it was just like, I think that's about all my body's going to take of this, doing this full-time hardcore like that. But it was great. But it was really time to get back and get a real job. Mm-hmm. And the reason I picked North Carolina wasn't that I was dead set on North Carolina, but I was just dead set on anywhere except for Michigan. And that was purely out of respect for my master.
Right.
He was, I didn't want to go. I knew I was going to make it big. I just knew, because I'm like, I've got the marketing background, and now I have all these friends on the Korean Tiger team, and I know all this cool stuff. And I knew I was going to make something great, and I just didn't want to ever be in a position where I would compete with my master. So I'm like, okay, so Michigan's out anywhere else. And, I wasn't heartbroken to get out of Michigan either. Mm-hmm. So what I did was we traveled a lot on the team, and I was at the airport a lot in Seoul, or in Incheon. But every time I would see someone that looked American, I would always stop. I'm like, excuse me, are you American? And they were usually there on business. And I would ask, where's like a good place to make a business? Where's a hot spot in America? And a couple people had mentioned Research Triangle Park, which is in North Carolina. I knew nothing about the state. I had never been in that area before in my whole life. And, you can't research without the internet. I mean, most people can't. My students nowadays can't imagine a life without the internet, but there was no internet.
Yep.
I had to make phone calls by using change. There wasn't even cell phones yet, and there wasn't even, I had to save my coins and go downtown and use a payphone and 12-hour time difference and call back to the United States and call Chamber of Commerce's and see what they had to offer for new businesses coming in. And, I zeroed in on North Carolina and bought a one-way ticket back to the United States to North Carolina. And knowing that I had to get open quick, I had a realtor pick me up. And I told the realtor I need to rent some space, and it can be square-shaped or rectangular shaped. And here's how much money I have, and I want as big as I can afford for that amount of money. And I asked them to get 10 places ready and promised I'd pick one by the end of the day.
Wow.
So I did. I had a lease. I picked the 4th place he showed me and got a lease going that first day. and then had that school open in 5.5 weeks.
Wow. And how big was that first school?
That first school, first of all, it was in a horrible area in town. It was a nice town, but it was the cheapest part of town because it was what I could afford. I didn't have a whole lot of money. So it was what I could afford, but it was 3,500 square feet, which made it a huge school.
Yeah.
To me, for America, that was a pretty big school.
That's a good size. Yeah.
But it was in a horrible location. But I had my marketing, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make up for the horrible location with this incredible marketing that I'm gonna do all over town, and it did work. People found us.
Okay. And how long were you in that location before you got to move?
I was in that location for. I knew I needed a bigger place after 3 years. Because by the end of the third year, I had 1,000 students. And 1,000 students don't fit in 3,500 square feet.
No.
I was running classes till 11 o'clock at night. I was running classes 7 days a week. And I was constantly looking over my shoulder for the fire marshal because we had way too many people in that space. So I knew I needed to find something. So I started looking. I did the math, and you figure it out, like you can either buy or you can continue to lease. And I'm like, in 7 years, I'd be paying the same amount, but in 7 years, I would own something rather than just, flushing it away as I pay lease every month. So I decided to build. That was my big plan. Nice. I didn't know how to build a building, but I know how to read books. I know how to find out. So, figured out, how to make a building, and not that it was that easy. But I guess after maybe 5 years or so, I moved into the new building. It should have only taken maybe a year to build, maybe 9 months, but it ended up taking a year and a half because 9/11 happened in the middle of that.
Ah, okay.
And construction came to a halt, and bank pulled out, my bone pulled out. It was horrible. Nobody was working, and it wasn't the time to make the world's largest martial arts school. Everybody was scared. Nobody knew what was going to happen. So it took me like a year and a half, 2 years to get that thing open.
Is that the location that still exists to this day then, right?
Well, it was 24,000 square feet what I built. So it was quite a bit bigger.
Yeah.
So it was a monster of a building. I mean, it was amazing. There's a YouTube video if you ever want to see it. There's a YouTube video on my Facebook page. It's pinned to the top because it was really cool. Cool. I designed the whole thing, painted it, the artwork's mine, everything. But when I felt it was time for me to retire, I had a heart-to-heart with my instructors, the ones that I knew would take over, and they said they didn't want it. They didn't want the big building. They said it was too much work. And, they said, you're here 7 days a week, and you're working 18 hours a day, which was true. Half of it was teaching, half of it was maintaining the building, and it was just a lot to keep up. So they all said they didn't want the big building. Okay. So what I did when I retired was we went back to leasing. We downsized to 7,500 square feet. And now it's very comfortable. They don't have a huge overhead or anything like that. And so that's where they're at now. So yeah, they're still in Cary now.
Okay. And at what point did you decide to start doing the seminars on like the business side of it and recruitment and retention and stuff? How did that start?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. It's not like I really planned to do that. I think I just started getting asked to do that.
Okay.
And some of the locations were like phenomenal locations. I'm like, yeah, I'll go. Like I said, I was shy, but I can talk about martial arts forever. Go to a party and I'll probably sit there, be nice and quiet. But if we're going to talk about martial arts, I got lots to say. So, I was really just telling people how I did it, because people want to know, like, were you born rich, or did your dad do martial arts, or, how'd you do it? And I'm like, really, we started from scratch, but it was that combination of keeping the Korean tradition mixed with American business. You got to treat the customer, like customer, not yell at them and things like that.
Definitely.
So I was able to combine those things together.
Okay.
So
when did you start doing that? Like how long ago?
I guess it kind of ramped up. Like once I made the big building, then there was a big interest. The magazines started noticing.
Makes sense.
And then once you're in magazines, then places start calling you. So I think, I probably did seminars like at the Super Show in Vegas, for probably 10 years. Did them in Atlantic City, like Kama, a lot of those places that hold those yearly conventions. I would always be a speaker there. And then trying to think of, there are just so many places. And then like some foreign places as well. So I started traveling to other countries because most other countries are kind of behind as far as martial arts business goes.
Right.
And, so into the UK, they weren't doing any kind of contracts or memberships yet. They were all just renting space by the hour at a YMCA. I went to Aruba because there was no nobody there had yet made a building or made a school that was just for that purpose. They were just teaching in the public schools.
Right.
I did a bunch of cities in Germany and all over the place, really.
Awesome. I mean, that's, especially if you like to travel, definitely a lot of fun.
Yes,
so.
yeah. And I mean, I got to go to some amazing places. So Spain and Italy, at the Colosseum,
That's
Mallorca.
cool.
Yeah, some wonderful places. So, I mean, I really got to see the world, through martial arts.
Okay. At what point in your martial arts journey did you start cross-training and start training in other styles of martial arts other than Taekwondo?
Well, I started Taekwondo and Hapkido back in Detroit.
Okay.
Because we had another instructor that taught Hapkido. So I did both styles there, although I did start in Taekwondo first.
Okay.
And then I picked up Hapkido as well. So I trained in both of those. And then, one thing with having that big school, everybody wanted to see it. Masters would call me and say, hey, can I come see it? And so this was amazing for me that I'm like, yeah, you can come see it. But you got to teach when you come. And so they would teach a seminar.
Nice.
And, so I would get to jump in and train with these incredible masters. And then some would even, stay for a while, like stay a year or two and, start up a program. So I had some people that stayed with me for like even 10 years, like kickboxing program. And
wow.
We had, like a Tai Chi, and then of course Wing Chun with Chifu Samuel Kwok, and Gumdo, Capoeira, Judo, Salat, Kali. And so I would always make sure that I would always schedule those classes at a time where I could go in there. So that was part of the deal. Okay, I'll give you space to teach here, but I get to be your first student. I get to train for free.
Okay.
That was always the deal. So I got to train so many different styles and with so many amazing masters. It's incredible.
How was capoeira training?
Capoeira?
Yeah.
It was, I would say I probably don't have that much dance rhythm, so it was really fun. But we got to the part where you had to like chant into it, and it's like I wasn't really into the chanting part, and then we had to play instruments, and I wasn't really very good at that.
The berimbau. Yep.
I tried, but I wasn't the best student. We'll just say that. But I did have fun.
That's a style I've always wanted to try, at least when I was younger. I don't know about now. I don't know if my knees could take it now, but I always wanted to try it when I was younger and never got to. So
yeah, it was fun, just trying so many different things. And, and they all seem very different, but in some ways they're all very much alike. And even now, I picked up Shotokan karate, which is completely new for me.
Yeah, you mentioned
that. I picked that up just
That's
since
awesome.
I've been here in Mexico.
And how are you enjoying that? Because that was actually my second style I started when I was in high school. So
I love it. I just got my purple belt.
Congrats.
Nice. It's funny when you're in a security black belt and when masters have seen you in the magazines or maybe even come to your seminar, it's hard to just walk into a school and say, I want to be a student. That makes them very uncomfortable.
Yep.
When I first got to Puerta Vallarta, one of the very first things I did was, I had already done my homework. I showed up at the best martial arts school, at the best Taekwondo school. And I walk in and the master looks at me and goes, are you here to make a school? I'm like, no, I'm retired, And then he says, are you here to buy this school? I'm like, no, I don't want to buy it. I just want to train.
That's awesome. Nice.
And my Shotokan instructor really had a hard time with, I'm like, I'm a white belt in Shotokan. I've never done this before. And he's like, no, you have to wear your black belt and you have to be at the front of the class. I'm like, no, I don't know what I'm doing. And, and these kids, they've earned their rank. I'm a white belt like everybody else. He had a hard time with that, and it took him I'm like, stop calling me Master Rondy. Just Rondy.
And I've heard that from so many people, different ways. Some people would rather wear their higher rank, and some people would rather wear and I see both sides, and it's whatever's comfortable with you and the instructor, and it's cool though. I mean, it's kind of fun to go back to the beginning and start over.
It was just because he really shows me a lot of respect, but I'm like, no, when I do it wrong, you yell at me like you yell at everybody else. I really just want to be a student. Have you read the book, The E-Myth, where it talks about, have you read that?
No, I haven't actually.
That's a great business book,
okay.
But it talks about making systems. And that was really instrumental when I put together the school, the concept for the school. But it also talks about how, I love martial arts, so I'm going to make a martial arts school. And then when you become successful at it, what happens is you watch other people while you're managing the office enjoy your martial arts school, and you don't get to enjoy it as much as you thought because you're running the business and you're taking care of the customers. And so after retirement, I get to go full cycle. I get to go and be a student again. So that's what I'm really enjoying. It's just because this is how it all started. Right. It all started just because I love martial arts.
Well, and that's a great reason. So good. So what
Yeah.
what led to you getting involved with and founding some of the charities you've worked with?
Yeah, we founded a charity called the White Tiger Community Cares. And, we were teaching these kids to, break stuff, kick stuff, to rip everything up. And I just thought, well, it's only fair if we teach them how to build things as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it all came to do with a Black Belt project. I think almost every school has some sort of a Black Belt essay that they have to write.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep,
Right?
yep.
Have you done that too? You have to write
Yes.
the 2-page typed essay. Okay. So here's my story about that. Back in Detroit, I took my first degree Black Belt, and I wrote this essay. It had to be an essay about what Taekwondo means to you.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had to do some soul searching. Like, okay, I really got something to write here. I wrote it with a box of tissues, I'm like, oh my God, it was so deep, and I'm like, oh my God, my instructor, I'm sure he's going to cry when he reads this. This is so meaningful. And I worked so hard on it. We had to type it out and put it in a manila envelope and sign your name across it, as you sealed it, and hand it to them with your Black Belt application, and nothing was ever said about it. We did our Black Belt test and nothing was ever said. And I would swear 2 years went by, and my master was in Korea. And I thought, well, I'm going to be the favorite student, and I'm going to clean up his office because it's a disaster. So I'm going to go tidy up his office. And when I was tidying up his office, I came across my envelope, not even opened.
Wow.
And I thought about it. I'm like, well, why would he read it? Why do I need to tell him how great Taekwondo is? He already does it. He's going to do it for the rest of his life. So what a useless point this was.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to change this. So for my students, for testing for their Black Belt, instead of giving me a 2-page essay about why Taekwondo is so great, I'm going to do it for the rest of my life anyways. They don't need to tell me. Why don't they tell it to other people that haven't tried martial arts? So instead of writing the paper, I have them do a project. And the project could be helping us teach a class to their PE class, and showing all the kids at their school all the great things about Taekwondo. Mm-hmm. Or how about you write something and get published in a magazine? Or you write a story to the news and see if they'll come out and film it. So what their project was is something that would show non-students, prospect students, how great martial arts is, and possibly plant the seed in someone else's mind about starting. And that's what happened. Is over the years, people would be like, oh my God, I did this demo at my school, and 3 kids joined, and now they're getting their Black Belt. So it just kind of worked that way. So
that's great. That's a really cool idea.
I kind of forgot the question.
No, that's actually a really good idea. It's just kind of how you got into the charities.
Okay,
Yep.
yes. So in addition to that, we also do a group charity project. And the group charity project, we did a number of different things. We would hold yard sales, car washes, all these different kinds of things. And that money would go to this charity. And the charity funded the kids who couldn't afford martial arts in our town. And these were usually kids that had no after-school care. Mm-hmm. And so we got the police department to join in with us. And the police department would actually drive them to our facility after school. We would teach them. They had to practice, the Black Belt character traits. They had to turn in progress reports from school. They had to stay in school. And when they did that, all of their training and materials was free as long as they continued to go to school, and teachers would say that they were trying. They didn't have to have perfect grades, but they had to at least be in school and trying.
Right. And
then what happened over the years is, it doesn't cost that much for us to teach a class, but we were raising so much money because we tested hundreds of Black Belts every year. So we had all this extra money. So these kids that they stayed in school, they're like, okay, I stayed in school, like you said, and I graduated from high school, like you told me to do. Now what? We're like, well, now we can afford to send you to college completely free.
Wow.
And so we were able to sponsor these kids and send them to college. And I mean, from where these kids came from, they didn't have a chance. And so, it just changed their lives. It changed their lives completely.
That's cool.
Their lives and the lives of their families. And so that's why we got so much into it, because it made such an impact in our town. Mm-hmm. It was just amazing, what kids could do. You got a 10-year-old test for his Black Belt. Oh, what'd you have to do? I had to do 8 forms plus choreo. I had to do some sparring. I broke, 6 boards, and I put a kid through college.
Nice.
That's pretty impressive.
What led to you getting involved in this TV series that you were on?
Which one was that? Was that the
Zen Beauty?
Zen Beauty?
Yes.
Okay, that I just got asked to do it, and I wasn't sure that I wanted to do it, but it was a couple weeks out in San Diego shooting, and it was fun. It was just a pilot for a TV, and it was what they did was they took a couple women and some were what they considered natural beauties that did, it was me, I guess I was one of them. I was the Taekwondo. There was a yoga and like Pilates or something, or ballet or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So women that did something to keep themselves youthful.
Okay.
That was natural. And then they kind of like compared us, I guess, to women that had a lot of enhancements.
Okay.
So it was
wow.
It was just odd.
Okay. I didn't know anything about the show, and I read it on there. So interesting.
I mean, it was fun for me. You know,
Yeah.
I got a fun trip out of it. They took really good care of you. You know, you get pampered. It was really kind of fun. But when you do something like that, it is a whole lot of standing around waiting to do something.
Okay.
So, you know, I thought I would try it, but I'm like, no, this really isn't for me. I want to be back at the school actually doing something.
Okay, cool.
But it was kind of fun to be pampered for a couple weeks.
Nice. And I definitely wanted to ask, in your resume here, it says you've done a few columns for Taekwondo Times Magazine. I'm curious, first of all, what you enjoyed about that, and then have you ever considered writing a book?
Oh, good question. Yes, I wrote for them for, I think, 10, 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of stopped like when I retired. But I wrote 2 columns for them. I wrote one, East Meets West.
Yep.
I wrote about my experiences, you know, as an American living in Korea, and just a lot of it was just kind of funny. I found, you know, just so different.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one was a business column that I wrote that I would give little tips. Like one of them was, you know, do a project instead of an essay for the black belt requirement. And yes, I'm working on a book.
Oh, cool.
I'm actually,
awesome.
all these seminars that I used to teach, I probably have like maybe 18 different subjects that I would teach seminars on.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm doing is I'm taking each one of those and turning it into a book form. So I'm really not traveling that much to do these seminars anymore. But people are still contacting me, like still, even a couple of years after I stopped, and they're like, I saw you at the Super Show, or I saw you here, and what did you say about this? You know, they're asking for more details.
Right.
So I'm putting them together in book form.
That's really cool. And when do you have a
I'm working on them.
target date when the first one will come out, or hoping?
No, we don't have target dates here in Mexico. It just gets done when it gets done. So, you know, I do my writing usually like on the beach. I'll bring my computer and I'll write some. So, but I will get it done. But
Okay.
I don't have a date yet. But the first one that's going to come out is a year of marketing. And what I did was I took
cool.
my notes from what I would do, and I did it 3 months in advance always. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, whatever your date is today, the work would have been done 3 months ago. You know, that way you can always order your supplies, train your people, or whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
Get your permits or whatever. So it's just kind of like a guidebook. You would open it up to, you know, today's date, I guess, and you would look, this is what you're going to do in 3 months. And I listed things that I do as kind of like blanket marketing. Now, none of my stuff was paid marketing. I never did any paid marketing because I always knew ways to not have to pay for it. But I would do blanket marketing to the general public. Then I would do a little bit tighter marketing to the people on my warm leads list. And then I would always do something fun for the employees, you know, employee motivation and for my team. So I had all these different areas that I would make sure that I touch base on every single month.
Okay.
You know, try to take care of all these different sectors every single month. And that's what it is. It's a guidebook to that. And I think it'll be really helpful for schools.
Okay.
And,
Cool.
you know, because when you go to a seminar, you take notes, but
Yep.
you don't always remember. And this way they'll have the pictures and the words and the links and everything that they'll need.
That's great. I'm excited for
All
that.
right there.
I will definitely be checking that one out for sure. So talk a little bit about what is it SISU Kwan? SISU Kwan?
SISU Kwan.
Mhm.
Okay, SISU, first of all, is a word that I grew up with. My heritage, we're Finnish. My family's Finnish.
Okay.
And SISU is a word, you can't even, it doesn't have an exact translation in English.
Oh.
But the best way to describe it is like courage, determination, you know, like incredible determination against all odds, you know, just never give up. Just really, you know,
Indomitable
spirit that you
spirit.
need in martial arts. When I was growing up, we had that was, the word SISU was like on every t-shirt that we had, on every cap that we wore. We always SISU, you know, you kind of put your hand like SISU. You know, as a country, Finland uses that as like a motivation.
Mm-hmm.
So years ago, when I was in Korea and I was talking to some grandmasters and they were asking questions about how come I teach the styles that I teach? Because my styles that I really focus on are Taekwondo, Hapkido, and Wing Chun. And the reason that I really like those three together is Taekwondo is your long range, your Hapkido is your mid-range, and then your Wing Chun is, I always call it your elevator fighting, is your close range. Mm-hmm. And I think that they make a nice, well-rounded package going together. And so they said, you know, we're going to recognize you as your own Kwan. And they said it was like the 49th recognized Kwan And so they said, you need a name. And so right away that word came to me, SISU, so SISU Kwan. So now what I do with that is, I do certify my students through the Korean Hapkido Federation and through Kukiwon. But in addition, if they want, I can also offer them SISU Kwan certification. And what a lot of masters around the world are using this for is the masters that kind of fell through the cracks, like the orphans. And by that, I mean like the masters that run their own schools, but their master has long passed and they don't have anybody to test them or to certify them. And they don't know how to get their continuing ranks. Or the, school owner that does use Kukiwon certification, except for his own master didn't get him Kukiwon certification. You can't go from no Kukiwon to 5th degree or 6th degree, right? You have to do them in order. They say they offer skipped on, but those are rare, and I've never been able to pull one off. So it kind of fills in the gaps for that. It's something to put on the wall, to kind of show your students that you've worked for it. Because some students need that. You usually need that certificate wall to show what you've done. So I can help masters out with that. In fact, I've got a bundle that I'm mailing out today. Some to USA, and I've got one's here in Mexico and one's going out to Ecuador.
Nice. So what is some advice you would give someone who's thinking of getting involved in martial arts for the first time? They've never done it, and they just want to know, what should they look for in a school? What should they look for in an instructor? And maybe some things they should avoid.
That's a good question. Unlike me, when I just walked in, because you just didn't know. I guess you would just have to go and just watch. I would watch maybe a few classes or go try a little trial package and test it out. Make sure that it's a distance that you're comfortable with driving, because it is something that you need to do a couple times a week. And also, schools focus on different things. There are some schools that are more for character development, more family class. There are some that are more about competition, and just make sure that it fits what you're looking for. So kind of do a little bit of research and go ask. And, a lot of times they'll let you sit in the audience and just watch a class and hear the parents, see what they say, what the others are talking about, and see if it's a fit.
Nice.
I think most schools do a trial package. I guess I would avoid going to any place that demanded that you did some kind of a long-term contract just right off the bat.
Agreed.
You should always get a chance to try before you buy.
So as a traditional martial artist, what are your thoughts on MMA and the UFC, and is that something you're a fan of at all?
Oh, I love watching it.
Okay.
I absolutely love watching it. In fact, a fighter from our school here in Mexico was on TV last night, and
cool.
he won. Oh, but they train really hard here. That, and there's no pampering here. There's no air conditioning. Schools are on the second or the third floor. It's just suffocating. No comfy air conditioning, no comfy mats. But it was a good fight. I love to watch it. I didn't encourage my students to do it.
Right.
Because mostly my students that could afford, my prices were, had jobs that wouldn't allow them to go get beat up and get back to work the next day,
Yeah.
It was more professional workers that couldn't really dedicate their time to actually competing in it. But yeah, I absolutely love watching it.
Very cool. All right. Who are maybe 3, 4, 5 names that you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
I gotta name my instructors, right?
It's up to you. It's your personal Mount Rushmore.
Okay. Let me see.
They can be people you've met and trained with. Right. They can be just people you look up to.
Oh, people that I've trained with. Okay, of course, my Sifu, Samuel Kwok. He's amazing. He's like the Energizer Bunny. He just teaches. Tim Hartman, he does Arnis. He's out of Buffalo. Cool. He's a great guy. He's great to train with. Really good classes. He's going to be coming here. I've got him scheduled to come here.
Oh, awesome.
He's going to teach on the beach with me.
Okay.
This is a name that maybe not many people know because it's with the Dragon Society. Rick Moneymaker. That's martial science. That's after you've trained for many years and you're looking for what else is there? What else is there? And then you're like, what do these forms really mean? That's who you need to train with, is the dragons. Okay. It's their philosophies on the forms, on the bunkai, nothing that you would ever even think of. Really amazing.
Cool.
Ji Hun Jae, he came and he taught for us Hapkido seminar. Amazing guy. Again, Energizer Bunny. Grandmaster Kim Jae from Korea. He used to be the dean of Kukiwon. And when I was in Korea, he really took good care of me and made sure that I got into the Kukiwon Academy and made sure that I got to train in all the right places and meet all the right people. And he's come to America and come and judged at my school. he always calls himself my Korean father.
Nice. Okay.
And there's many others.
Yeah.
Many others that I could take a day. But
hey, that's a good start, though.
those are just amazing martial arts. And of course, my master,
Mhm.
Tai Chung in Detroit.
I think you're probably the first guest that's actually their whole list is some people that no one else has ever listed. So that's because most people will throw like Bruce Lee or Chuck Norris on there, and you're one of the first that hasn't done that. So that's cool. Nice. That's a good
Well,
list.
I haven't trained with him, but
Well, they don't have to be people.
with.
Yeah, they can be people you trained with, or just people you admire. I mean, it doesn't have to be someone you've trained with.
Oh,
but,
okay.
but no, that's still a great list, though.
Okay.
Good. So, in all your years
Yes,
of
it's a
martial
great
arts, then is there a one or two philosophies that you've learned throughout your martial arts journey that just rise to the top and they're super important to you?
I guess really just never stop learning.
Nice.
Just never stop being a student. I think that's just the most important thing, for your martial arts, but I mean, just for your life, you just got to live your life. Just keep going forward. I think the day you stop is the day you start to get old.
Yeah.
And one thing that my master, Sifu Samuel Clark, always says, when you do go to a training seminar or when you do go to class, I don't know if you've heard this, but he says, bring an empty cup.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard that?
Yep, I've heard that.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah. So I think that's really important too, that even if you think you know what the instructor's teaching, I'm sure there's some little golden nugget in there that you can find. I think you can learn something from any seminar or any class that you go to. You can always learn something new. I
like that a lot. All right, I got a few fun ones to wrap it up. First one is a favorite martial arts book.
I don't know about a martial arts book. I don't really. No, I always read business books.
Oh, okay. Was there a good business one that you think would be beneficial to martial artists?
Anybody that wants to make a school, they need to read The E-Myth. It's by Michael Gerber.
Okay.
So The E-Myth, and that will talk about how to make systems. Because if you just open up a school and you just teach the classes yourself, you can only get to be so big. But if you want to really make a successful school, you need to learn how to think, where am I going to be at 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and who's going to take over?
Okay.
I knew who was going to take over my school for the last 15 years,
Wow. All right. How about?
So I would say that would be the number one book.
Okay. I will add that to the list. Cool. Now, this one, maybe you have an answer for, maybe you don't, but do you have a favorite martial arts video game? Were you ever a gamer?
No, no, I'm not.
Okay. So
that's before me.
It's about 50-50 with my guest on that one. Hey, there you go.
Pong is the last video game I played.
The funny thing is you're my second guest that mentioned Pong, so that's kind of funny. Nice. All right. How about a favorite martial arts TV show?
It was kind of martial arts, The Highlander from long ago.
Yes. Actually, Adrian Paul was a former guest. Yeah, he was on my show.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I was lucky enough to interview him. It's a great show. I still watch reruns of it. So, all right. How about a favorite martial arts movie?
Bloodsport.
Nice. Okay.
And I watched it. I watched it when I was a green belt.
Uh-huh.
And when I was getting ready to test for green belt, I think that's when it was. And as an adult, I got chicken pox. And I got quarantined. And all I had with me was a videotape of Bloodsport. So I watched that thing inside and out.
Nice. That's actually cool.
For like 12 days. Quarantined for so long.
I still watch it at least once a year. It's a go-to. It's a guilty pleasure. So nice. All right. And
now of course it's Cobra Kai. Gotta watch that.
So you're a Cobra Kai fan? Okay, cool.
Oh yes.
I watch it with my daughter. We binged the whole season 5 the day after it came out, and I'm hoping we get season 6. So.
It was funny. My husband's like, "What are you watching?" And I told him it was the security tapes from my school. Right?
That's awesome. That's funny. All right, final question. Now, this one doesn't have to be a martial arts movie. It can be, but just a favorite movie fight scene. Is there one that just jumps out?
Oh, geez. Okay, it wasn't like one particular. Do you remember that movie, Oing Bak?
Oh, Ong Bak, yes, with Tony Jaa. Yes.
Yes, that one. I love where he slid underneath the car.
Yeah, that whole 10-minute fight / chase scene.
Yeah.
So good.
Okay, I would have to say that one.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get him on the show someday. That he'd be fun to talk to. And I read somewhere that whole sequence was filmed in one take, which is just insane.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's just crazy. So Is there anything else you wanna mention or get out there before I let you go? You definitely had just an amazing life and career, and we could have spent 3 hours just going through your resume and talking about everything on there. But is there anything else you want to mention or promote, or anything we have coming up? Or
Well, I guess we do offer the martial arts training camps here. In fact, I've got a group coming on Monday. Another group coming. So if anybody ever wants to come to Puerta Vallarta, what we do is we kind of customize a week. It's right here on the ocean. We'll use the ocean and the jungle.
Okay.
And so it's physical training, and it's also business seminars, and they can kind of tailor it for what they want. Some people want mostly business and a little bit of training, and some people want more training, less business, and some people they're like, how about play and a little bit of business?
Okay.
And we can kind of tailor it. We've got the accommodations. We've got incredible places to stay. And plus, we know the city. We're like little tour guides. We do all kinds of stuff here. So that's a really good way if anybody wants to kind of jumpstart and get motivated to go back and have lots of ideas for recruitment, retention, team training, marketing by the month, things like that.
Okay.
We can help you out with that.
Nice. Is that just on the whitetigertkd.com website they can find info?
Yeah, if you go to whitetigertkd.com, that's the main school website. But on the left-hand side where there's that column, it says Train in Mexico.
Yep.
Just click on that, and that'll bring you to me.
Perfect.
And then you can click on the business seminars. And we've really had some great trips. And, it's also a tax write-off, too, if you own your own business. So it's great.
Oh, well, there you go. I will put a link to that on the show notes for sure. So when the episode comes up, people can see that, because that'd be fun. That'd be, oh man. I've
really is a lot of fun.
never been to Puerta Vallarta, so I'd love to go.
It's, you didn't ask why I picked this place.
Yeah.
There's a reason why I picked here. It's, as you train more and more, and you've trained for decades as well, you get into more of the internal, martial arts, and it's the ley lines. This is the strongest point in all of the Americas.
Okay.
This is where 12 lines intersect here. There's the vortex right here, the largest vortex, which is the energy lines of the earth, the ley lines, is right here in Puerta Vallarta.
Nice. Well, I just want to say thank you so much. This has been so much fun. You just an amazing story. I love hearing about it, and especially I love interviewing fellow Taekwondo stylists. So it's always fun to talk about that, and I so appreciate it, and it's been a blast having you on the show.
Well, thank you. It was really fun. It was really fun. Like I said, I could talk about martial arts forever.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.